in the asset management business, there's only one way fees are going, and that's down. So we have to constantly evolve to be more efficient. It's going to have cost savings, and it's going to open up a bunch of investment ideas and opportunities that people haven't been able to use today because of the technology.
I think this is a really important conversation that maybe is an exception to most of the day, which is a traditional asset manager and with their role, with their opportunities, and with their ideas and the future of cryptography and blockchain and cryptocurrency mean for that TradFi. And you've been really a pioneer in that. So I want to take you back. We were on a park bench. It was like mid-2020, so you can imagine we were meant to be social distancing. I'm sure we were breaking all the rules. And I remember you said something to me that you've now been on the record lots of times and saying that every time we start talking about the opportunity in blockchain, it inevitably ends up in Bitcoin. And you weren't saying I don't want to talk about Bitcoin, but the problem was it was a distraction for what you called possibly the greatest transformation in financial services in a generation. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but talk me through why that was such an early epiphany for you.
Yeah, so what I said was, look, Bitcoin is the greatest distraction from one of the greatest disruptions that is coming to financial services. And I think the two are blockchain and AI. And at the time, I probably thought blockchain was on a faster path. Now I look at AI innovation, and it's unbelievable how quickly that's happening. But the reason why is anytime you started to have a conversation about blockchain, you became in this debate about Bitcoin, which to me is like a religion at this point, right? You can argue whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter. And I have come to the conclusion that because it's a great fear currency, and when I say that, if you're from the US, you don't really think about this, but you travel internationally, and I remember talking to somebody from Israel who said, my parents and grandparents had their money taken away by the government. They will always keep a percentage of their savings in Bitcoin. And they're not going to put it in a Bitcoin ETF because the government can reach that, but they'll keep keys for their Bitcoin. And then talking to an employee or person in the Middle East who said, if I say the wrong thing, I could have my bank accounts frozen. I always keep a percentage in Bitcoin. So that in my mind gave me like comfort around this floor. But the point on the blockchain was, it is such a, from a technical standpoint, and I ran technology for a while, it just, as a program, as a programming language, it does really important things, right? And these are things in financial services that are going to be significant. Anybody who's run a financial services company, we spend a ton of money reconciling data between systems. Boom, that goes away, right? There's this batch process, all these products and back office are, because we're sitting there's a bunch of mainframes. I'm pretty sure every major bank out there is still running a mainframe, and you batch process. And so why does the New York Stock Exchange close at 4 o'clock? It closes so everybody can reconcile. What Bitcoin does is you have atomic settlement, so you're going to settle immediately. And then the final piece is you don't have to worry about who the counterparty is on the other side. When we do an FX contract, we'll use a major bank because we don't want to know, we don't want to worry about whether we're going to get paid for with that counterparty. But if you have it in blockchain, one, because the token can prove ownership. Two, you can get paid immediately, so you have atomic settlement. And three, the smart contract can execute it without people interfering. You actually don't need that intermediary. So that drives down costs. It's more secure. And I was talking to Anthony this morning. He said, well, what about quantum computing? Remember, when you worry about quantum computing, you're also going to have quantum security to offset it. So I feel like that will evolve with it. You have transparency. Regulators are going to love it. For all that they're afraid today, they have tremendous amount of transparency, more than they ever, and you add AI to that, and it's going to be a great way. They're actually going to, they're going to fall in love with it. Efficiencies like atomic settlement, and then finally, operational cost efficiencies. Like in the asset management business, there's only one way fees are going, and that's down. So we have to constantly evolve to be more efficient. And so it's going to open up, it's going to have cost savings, and it's going to open up a bunch of investment ideas and opportunities that people haven't been able to use today because of the technology.
So Clayton Christensen, good Salt Lake City boy, where I live now, of course, has the famous innovator's dilemma theory. And I'm curious, in your boardroom, in your executive team, and just you as a leader thinking through the reason that traditional incumbent firms struggle with change, disruption, innovation, is that there are real revenue disruptions. There are real risks. You are creatively destructing your own business, which is extremely difficult to do for the benefit of the future. How have you led through that and even managed your own fear?
Yeah, so I actually think this is one of the issues or one of the challenges of public company CEOs. So first of all, I'm third generation. My grandfather started Franklin Templeton. So I do tend to think generationally. Like, I don't want to be the one where they're like, man, we had a really great thing going until Jenny missed that obvious trend, right? And so you do have to think and balance it with what has to be done today, right? And so I think that's every CEO's challenge. And the reason I say the public company is tough is because there's so much pressure on quarterly earnings. And the work, we started doing stuff in blockchain in 2017, 18. We launched our Benji tokenized money market product in, I think, approved by the regulators in 2020 or 2021. These are not going to be meaningful contributions to our earnings probably for 5 years from when we started or more. You know what? Most CEOs are going to say that's the next guy's shift.
Yep.
I'm not going to make this investment today because I got to deal with the quarterly earnings. So that's one mindset that I think that's why private companies often can think a little longer. And then the second piece is, so then when you have these folks who are really excited about this technology, by the way, they tend to be really disruptive to the rest of the firm. The rest of the firm's like, yeah, that's all great, but I got to get my sales numbers now. I need to get, the NAV done at the end of the day. I'm not going to talk about that stuff. And so you have to almost, and we're doing it with AI, you almost have to protect the group who are innovating around this, and everybody will complain. They get too many resources and be skeptical about whether they're going to actually deliver everything, and give them the attention they need so that they can actually grow until they ultimately become a meaningful contributor.
So let's talk a little bit about this laboratory. You mentioned Benji already, which first 40 Act.
It's a tokenized mutual fund that is on the public blockchain. It's the only one. The others shadow essentially on it. We are running it on the public blockchain. Okay, and you've been talking with MAS Singapore, I've seen in the public domain as well. So what are you excited about down the road? What's the roadmap from here? There's a lot. I mean, so I genuinely believe that mutual funds, ETFs, all these things are going to be just on the blockchain, right? Because it is more efficient for all the reasons that I just said. So that's obvious. But I also think if you can drive out the cost of a transaction, right? So the frictional cost, what is the cost of a transaction? It's all the toll takers who take a little fee as that transaction happens, right? When I use that foreign exchange, we pay big banks a lot of money to execute a foreign exchange contract. As you eliminate that, and you could drive down the cost, a couple things you can achieve. One is our tokenized money market fund, you can open an account with $20. Our traditional money market fund, you have to open the account with $500 because you can't subsidize this. The larger investors don't want to subsidize the small investors. That doesn't happen when you put it on a really efficient rails. And so I think that it's gonna naturally happen to all the traditional products. And then it opens up new investment opportunities because if you take out the frictional costs, you can start to create song rights. I love the Rihanna example, didn't really work that well, but there will be these types of things where she issued 300 NFTs, each worth 0.00033% royalty on a song. Why can she do that? Because when Spotify plays it, the smart contract kicks off. John's a big Rihanna fan that says he has the token, he has all the rights to it, and it pays him. Yeah. Suddenly, the average investor now can invest the way institutions, it was institutions who owned the rights to the Bob Marley, library of songs and things. And so there's going to be a lot new interesting products. And then this atomic settlement. So with Benji, we're a regulated money market fund. We have filed it in every jurisdiction. We also have a private one too. We're working so that you'll be able to move from stable coins into the money market fund. And you can do that 24/7, 365. We announced something with Standard Charter and OKX and are working with others to build that kind of environment. And so it's where you start to convene the digital asset world with the TradFi world. And I think there's the seam, I think the Benji is an example of where you're starting to see that happen.
Rihanna is your ringtone when you call me. You realize it. Can we dream even farther, though, when we talk about tokenizing mutual funds, ETFs? What about, I mean, you talked about the friction of the 4 o'clock close for reconciliation. Do you foresee a world in the short, medium, long term where public equines, public treasuries?
I mean, I'm pretty sure Brian Armstrong at Coinbase has been talking about this. I think he did it in Davos when we were on a panel. And yeah, why not? All he has to do is hold an inventory. It's almost like an ADR. And you could trade 24/7. There's already after hours. Why wouldn't you want to trade and get atomic settlement? Why are we waiting T+1, T+2? Like, it makes zero sense. And we're waiting because the infrastructure doesn't support it. But naturally, I actually think that as the regulation clarifies, right, because that's been the key, as the regulation clarifies, those that have the digital assets will start to offer more traditional types of products. And it'll be 24/7, 365. And, you know, I don't know how fast that comes. I think regulation, the technology exists to do it. Regulation is probably the biggest inhibitor to that happening today quickly, but it's happening. It's going to happen.
So let's finish with that. So I imagine most of the speakers that you're going to see through the course of the next day and a half, this regulatory legislative environment is existential. I mean, it is very acute, as you heard from Kraken earlier. For someone like Franklin Templeton, clarity and liberalization around the regulatory structure, how does that change what you're doing? Does it accelerate some things, not others? Does it give you more comfort? Or does it not change anything that you do?
Yeah, I mean, like, we're a highly regulated entity, so we've got to play by the rules. Now, that's been at times frustrating because I think it's, in trying to do that, because we don't want to risk the rest of our business, we've allowed these unregulated entities to take off, right? But if you actually put if you put yourself in the shoes of a regulator, guess what? There's no upside to getting regulation right. Nobody goes, hey, that guy was really ahead of himself, right? But by the way, if you get it wrong, you are literally crucified. I mean, everybody complain, you should have known, you should have seen it. And so, unfortunately, regulators are not in the position to take a lot of risk on where this is going. And let's face it, there are a huge number of digital assets that even all of you in this ecosystem will say, I don't see it. That is going to blow up at some point. And so if you're a regulator, it's so hard to define the rails to be able to deal with that risk. And that's why I think it's going to be slow. And I think the good news is you see, we've worked a lot with regulators all across the globe. And I would say, you know, they've taken different approaches. Like an MAS in Singapore has a sandbox. So as long as you're working within it, you're protected, but it's not something broader than that. Hong Kong has been very aggressive on trying to be very prescriptive. UAE, same thing. And so there's a little bit of competition with each other, which I think is healthy. And they are also talking to each other to learn from each other, which is good. But listen, I don't envy the regulators because I think this is it's a bit of a challenge. And on the other hand, if you don't start to regulate, you put the consumer, which is who you're designed to protect, at risk because the consumer is now entering a completely unregulated zone. And that's not a good thing either.
Yeah. So very last thing. For the investors out there, is there, and you can't say Franklin Templeton, but is there any category?
Who says I can't?
Any category of this ecosystem as an investor that you think is the most exciting? Tech layer, killer app, infrastructure, picks and shovels. What is the most exciting area?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, you know, the picks and shovels and sort of the baseline of the strong, you know, layered apps, like like you always, if you were mining for gold, who made the most money? I mean, there were some people who made it in gold, but most people, it was the guys who sold the picks and shovels. So I like the rails as a sort of starting point. And then there are some really great consumer apps that are coming out that I think are really interesting, which, by the way, I tell my equity guys, like, you should pay attention to this area because some of these companies are going to disrupt, you know, and you're only looking in the ecosystem of sort of the traditional, and there's going to be disruption to those companies. And so, and then final thing, you know, we're a node validator, and I think, I don't know, 8 nodes or something. As an active investment manager, like, that is a game changer. Just imagine seeing on a public equity all the transactions that go in and out of that company and how much information that gives you. And so we, you know, provide research on, I think, 30 different coins. And our view is if you are not playing in the ecosystem, you actually cannot possibly have the insights and so that, again, that transparency point, it's pretty amazing to be playing in that space.
Well, that was a whirlwind, unfortunately, Jenny.
I didn't
Thank you
fast,
so
man. I
much.
was
I wish
watching
we
the
had more
clock,
time.
but
It's
like-
red already, but let's give Jenny a round of applause.
Thank you.